Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a comparison between the Sony a7CR and the Sony RX1R III. There's a lot of people trying to decide between these two cameras, what are the pros, what are the cons, what's same and what's different, and also, should they look at something like an a7R5, which is all part of the same lineup because it has the same sensor. But we'll get into that when we get into the specs. But first, I want to let you know that I do have hands-on real-world reviews of both of these cameras, that you can check that out. They are linked down below. And in fact, with the a7CR, we even have a user guide to help you set it up if you end up purchasing it or want to see how I would personally set up that camera. These cameras are very similar. Now, normally when we do these comparison videos, there's a lot of differences between the cameras or lenses that we put up here on the desk. But these two, they share so many of the same specs. But if you're trying to figure out what is different and which one is the right one for you, we're gonna help you figure that out by the end of this video, because I know exactly which one I personally would purchase, and I think many of you are gonna feel the same way at the end. So let's start off with the ergonomics and the outside of the camera. Now, one of the biggest selling points from Sony with this RX1R III is its size, is the fact that it's smaller and more compact than the a7R5. Now, that is all well and good and makes sense if the a7CR didn't exist right next to it, because this is also a small and compact camera. The first thing that you will notice that is different is that this one does not have a lens, which means it's interchangeable, and you can mix and match and put any E-mount lens on it that you want. Anything from Sony natively to Tamron or Sigma, you get to choose your own adventure. Now, this camera right here has a built-in 35mm f2 lens. This is the third generation that has used this lens from this specific model of camera. They've made tweaks along the way, but it is an older lens because the first one was released roughly 13 years ago when this camera came out. So there haven't been a lot of updates in that situation. So the question becomes, is the lens still good? Is it still usable? Will you get good results? So now with the ergonomic part, the C stands for cookie. No, it stands for compact. That's what the C stands for, because you can see that it's smaller than the a7R5, but shares a lot of the usability and features from there. This is meant to be the more compact, carry around one camera that you just take for street photography, for travel, and they try to say that it's pocketable sometimes. I mean, Sony didn't push the fact that it's pocketable, but they kind of like wink at you to say, look, it's small, it's compact, and it can go with you and maybe fit into your Jenko jeans if that's what you wear, but is it really much smaller? And the answer to that question is, you see it right here. It's not that much smaller. It is a little lighter, but they are the same weight with battery and media installed when this one doesn't have a lens. They are basically the same weight. We're looking at 18.2 ounces for the CR, and we are looking at 17.5 ounces or 498 grams for this right here. I don't think that weight difference, even when you start to add a lens here, maybe you're adding another pound, that is not gonna make all the difference in the world, especially when you get to the differences between these cameras a little later on when we're discussing them. So for me, I don't think it's a deal breaker at all that this camera is slightly heavier when you add another lens. Now, moving on to the viewfinder, you find the same EVF in both of these cameras. It is a 2.36 million dot EVF with 120 frames per second refresh rate. Is it small? The answer to that is yes, but it's the same one in both of these cameras, so you're going to expect similar, if not exactly the same results. Now, in terms of the screens on the back of the camera, this is where we see a slight difference. The a7CR has a 3-inch 1.03 million dot vari-angle touchscreen, which does include the vertical info option for when you rotate the camera vertically, the info does go vertical. Now, this screen flips out to the side and rotates. The screen on the RX1R III has a 3-inch 2.36 million dot fixed touch screen with vertical info as well. The problem here is that it is fixed. Yes, it has more resolution, which is nice to see from Sony, but the fact that the prior model to this had a flip screen that allowed you to flip it down when you're holding it above your head, or flip it up so that you can hold it down low towards the ground to get better results. You can't do that anymore. And to me, that is a failure. Now, one of the reasons they probably did that is because they wanted to make it thinner. And in this case, they put the EVF on the outside of the camera and didn't make it a pop-up EVF, which was really cool on the old one, which made it a little more compact, but it probably led to more issues having it pop out, and this is just built in and right there. That also takes away from the pocketability aspect of it because it sticks out this far on the back of the camera. Now, this would come in handy when you want to shoot something down low, which is what I did when I tested this out at the Phillies game. I like to get down low, especially if you're photographing kids or trying to get the baseball players to look larger. Now, thankfully for me, I was recording the electronic viewfinder, which meant I had a screen on it that I could make flat and hold it towards the ground and be able to do the thing that I wouldn't be able to do with the screen that's built into here. So in terms of check marks, which I like to give from time to time in videos like this, I'm giving a check mark to the a7CR for the ability to have it flip out and rotate, especially if you're a content creator and you want to talk to yourself or you just want to get those different angles. Let me jump in here real quick because I want to show you our custom Lightroom presets in action on this cute dog right here, starting with Blue's Clues, followed by Brooklyn. We've got C41, Copper Tone, which looks awesome, DeLorean, High C, Kaleidoscope, Mel Brooks, Saltwater Taffy, Thick, Tintype, and Wet Hot American Summer. And my all-time favorite from FroPack 1, with one click, we've got Skittles, and it goes boom. But all new and exclusive to FroPack 4, we have 4 custom adaptive Lightroom presets called Face Enhance, Full Body Skin Enhance, Eye Only Enhance, and Background Blur. So look, if you want to speed up your raw workflow, give yourself a great starting point, or you're just tired of other people's presets sucking, as you can see, our presets do not suck. That's why we created 14 all-new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at froknowsphoto.com/FroPack4. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters, and if you decide to pick them up right now, they are currently on sale. Or if you want to get the Grand Slam bundle that includes FroPack 1, 2, 3, and 4, and of course my favorite Skittles, you can save even more. Now, let's get back to the video. Moving on to the battery life. In the a7CR, you have a 2280 milliamp NP-F Z100 with USB-C charging, which is rated for roughly 490 photos. Now on the RX1R III, you have a 1020 milliamp NP-FW50 with USB-C charging and roughly 270 photos. Now, one has a Z100, the other has a FW50. It's basically half. It is an older battery technology that they basically replaced when they got to the Z battery in this camera. And they also use the same Z battery in just about all of the other Sony A7 cameras as well. I want more battery life. In the real world, shooting with this bad boy at the Phillies game, I went a couple hours early, shot around the game, and left in like the 6th inning, and I was at 12%. That is not very good. And one of the selling points Sony likes to use for the compactness of this is that it's smaller and you don't have to fiddle with all of the buttons. And if you already have the a7R anything or the a7 whatever, that, well, you don't have to fiddle with it and this is easier. But also, isn't it better that you already have the Z batteries for that camera, that it should be in a camera like this? That's why the a7CR has a bigger grip on the front so that it can fit the bigger battery. Now, if you already have all of those Sony batteries, I rather have the extra for that because you have to buy extra batteries for this bad boy right here. The selling point that they keep hammering home is, well, this is your everyday camera and this is your pro camera, and I just don't buy into that when this one camera could kind of do all of that. With that being said, I rather have a bigger grip. It just feels better in the hands. It doesn't make the camera much bigger because look, this lens sticks out this far, which is further than the grip on the a7CR. So you have the ability to make it more sexy as well as ergodynamic. So the check mark 100% is going to the a7CR for better battery life. Yes, you can charge it via USB-C, you can charge both of them that way, but this dies much quicker and takes away from the ability to have a grip, which makes the camera much easier to hold. Speaking of a grip, the a7CR still comes with an accessory grip that goes on the bottom that just makes it a little thicker so that your pinky isn't hanging off of the bottom looking for a place to live. Now, since we're talking about the body and the size of the grips, let's talk about usability. 100% all day long, I'm taking an a7CR over this because of the feel of the body. With a grip, it just feels better in the hands. The size and weight difference isn't that big of a deal for me, and I rather choose the lens that I put on the front of the camera myself rather than be locked into a box. And this will become abundantly clear why I say this when we get to the price of the camera at the end of this video. Since we're talking about the lenses, let's talk about them right now. The a7CR obviously does not come with a lens. You would have to pick any of the E-mount lenses that are in existence, and you can put it on here. Now, the lens that you have on this body is a 35mm f2, but it has a leaf shutter. This is where some of the differences start to come to play, because with the a7CR, you have a traditional shutter, which gives you 1/4000th of a second in mechanical, or 1/8000th when you are shooting with the electronic shutter. The R3 over here, this has a leaf shutter that maxes out at 1/2000th of a second at f2 for a mechanical shutter, but the fastest mechanical shutter that you can actually get out of this camera is 1/4000th of a second, but at 5.6. That kind of defeats the whole purpose of having an f2. With the electronic shutter, you can get 1/8000th of a second as well. And a quick side note about the electronic shutters in these cameras is that you might end up with a lot of rolling shutter when it comes to shooting fast action or moving subjects if you are shooting at 1/8000th. The issue here is that at 1/2000th of a second, you can shoot at f2. But on those bright days like I had out at the baseball game, you can see that my images are overexposed at 1/2000th of a second at f2 at 100 ISO when using the mechanical shutter. What this camera needs is a built-in ND filter. The more compact cameras from Fuji have built-in ND filters. You press a button, the ND filter comes on, and you're now able to use the leaf mechanical shutter at slower shutter speeds, but in brighter daylight, and still be able to shoot wide open with the lenses. That is a fail, in my opinion, that wasn't put here. Now, Sony will tell you that there's no room for them to put that in, but if you made any changes, that would have been a change that I would have liked to have seen, because the electronic shutter does have some of those issues that I talked about for rolling shutter, and when you're photographing an LED screen, or that so happens to be in the background, you can see the imperfections that show up at that point. Now, I should reiterate that the a7CR doesn't have ND built in either, but it does have a traditional mechanical shutter that goes much faster, which means you can do it without ND and be much better off. Now, speaking of leaf shutter, with the leaf shutter in this, you have unlimited flash sync speed, so you could shoot at any shutter speed when it comes to that, when it comes to syncing your flash. On the flip side, it's 1/160th of a second with the a7CR. So we'll give one little check mark over here to this camera for that, but for not having ND filter, you know what? Let's take that check mark away. Let me jump in here real quick and let you know that this video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you're looking to build your very own online portfolio, use what I've been using for my personal website at jaredpolin.com for well over 15 years at this point. The reason I do so is it's simple, easy, affordable, and I don't need to know coding, and I can also sell prints or anything else in the store without a problem. To get your 14-day free trial, head on over to squarespace.com/FronosPhoto. If you decide that it's for you, use the code FronosPhoto at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Now, let's get back to the video. Now let's get to the guts of the camera and what makes both of these models super unique. That is the image sensor. We have a 61 megapixel full frame BSI CMOS sensor that is powered by a Bionz XR processor. You are going to get the same exact image quality. Of course, the lenses are going to differ when you put on those lenses, but the image quality from that sensor is immaculate. It's incredible. It's the same thing that you find in the a7R V as well as all the way back in the a7R IV. Image quality is going to be stunning and superb. Now, being that it has the same processor and it has the same image sensor, you have the same exact ISO capability as well. Now let's move on to the frame rates, how many frames per second you can get for stills with both of these cameras. Starting with the a7CR, you have 8 frames per second with the mechanical shutter and 7 frames per second with the electronic. You can also do smaller RAW files. One of them is 26 megapixels when you get to the medium, which is interesting because on the R3 side over here, their medium is 29 megapixels, which not sure why there's a slight difference there, but put a pin in that real quick because you can only get 5 frames per second with the mechanical and electronic in this camera, and of course you have that medium RAW. Personally, when it comes to me shooting, I'm shooting in full RAW. I might do compressed lossless is my option that I personally choose. A lot of people are going to decide to shoot JPEGs, but that is not the way that I do it. I rather have more frames per second than less frames per second. If they have the same guts and the same capabilities, why is one doing more than the other? So check mark a7CR. Now, both of these cameras take one SD card, UHS 2, so trying to figure out why could you limit, or why would you limit one over the other is a little questionable. There might be a different buffer size inside, but I'm not privy to that information. But really, we're sticking with the check mark for the a7CR. Moving on to video specs. Now, you wouldn't really think that this camera is meant to be a video type camera, but in this day and age, you do have the ability to shoot video with almost any camera that exists. So if you have the ability, we might as well talk about it. The minor differences are you can shoot the a7CR in 4K up to 60 frames per second, whereas the R3 over here can only do 4K up to 30 frames per second. Now, the reason for that is probably, and this is conjecture, that it's a smaller, more sealed body. That means it's going to build up more heat, which might lead to shutting down or damaging internals if it had to shoot at much higher frame rates and crunch all of those numbers and get all of that stuff to the card. But really, these aren't meant for shooting video, but if I had to choose one as a camera that I needed to choose between both of these, I'm taking the a7CR for the better video features. And I should also mention that there's no headphone input or output, whichever way you want to say it, for this camera right here, but you have it on the a7CR. Moving on to image stabilization. In this day and age, that is one of the most important things to find in a camera, or at the very least in a lens. That's foreshadowing to tell you that this doesn't have it in the camera and this doesn't have it in the lens. There is no image stabilization. There's digital image stabilization when you do video in the camera, but not for stills, which might run into an issue or cost you some images when, for example, I'm at the Phillies game and I'm shooting the crowd walking in and getting there, and the concrete should be perfectly sharp and stable, but there's some movement there. The people moving at the slow shutter speeds is exactly what I want, but the inanimate objects, if I had stabilization in the lens or in the body, would be perfectly still. On the other side, the a7CR offers you up to 7 stops of stabilization with IBIS and can pair with stabilized lenses for more stabilization. Because it has IBIS, you have what's called pixel shift technology, which allows you to take up to a 240 megapixel image. Basically, it's shifting around the image sensor to give you a higher res shot. This is one of the major differentiators that causes me to give this the check mark over this many more times, as you've already noticed. IBIS should be built into a camera like this, but when you add IBIS, you're adding size as well as weight. You would think after 10 years of waiting for an updated camera from the Mark II that they would have tried to squeeze IBIS into this. That is a selling point in my mind. And the fact that you can You have it built into the body and you can have it built into the lenses right here makes this the better choice. Let me jump in here real quick and say, would you like me to send you a free guide to capturing motion in low light situations? Well, if you said yes, head on over to froknosphoto.com, look for this orange box, put your name, email address in it, hit send it. I'm gonna send you that guide for free, as well as add you to my email list, which I will not spam you on because I like to give you valuable information. So now let's get back to the video. And the reason I'm being so harsh on this R3 over here is because of the price. For the price, which I'm gonna say in a second, it should have all the bells and whistles you could ever think of. Why? Because it's $5,100 freaking dollars. Yeah, and it has basically the same stuff as this, except for the a7CR, in my opinion, does it better for a lot less. At the time of recording this, it's around $3,000 for the body only. That leaves you with what? $2,000, if my math is correct, to go ahead and purchase any lens that you want to put on to the front. You could go with something like a 35-1.4 from Sony. You could go with something like a 35-1.8 from Sony. You could look at the Sigma 35f2 and you're basically matching the lens that is here. Now that lens isn't a leaf shutter lens, but the leaf shutter to me is not a selling point on why I would buy a camera. But if I want to take this out on any shoot in the world and put a 70-200 on it, I can do it. I have the option, and it's cheaper. It's less money. $2,000 is a lot, and by the time you add the accessories and you add whatever lens you want, it's still going to be cheaper than this right here. And if you really care about the looks of the camera, I still feel like the a7CR is sexier. It comes in black, it comes in silver, you can choose your own adventure there, but I just feel that this is a more sexy camera because it is so loaded with amazing features. If you want more features and still pay less money than this R3 over here, you have the a7R5. Very similar. The a7CR is the baby brother compact camera that has basically the same guts of this camera. Here are the differences between the a7R5 and the a7CR. It's $800 more, has 2 card slots, which means it also has the CF Express A card slots and can take SD cards, has a joystick, a larger centered EVF, tiltable and vari-angle touchscreen, better frame rates and buffer, better IBIS, 8K video, full HDMI port, and has vertical grip availability. Yes, it's a trade-off when you go smaller, but if your goal is to go smaller and more compact but have the best quality possible, you're gonna get very similar image quality with these as well as the a7R5, but when you have to decide between these two cameras that basically do the same thing, my answer is simple. I am not buying a $5,100 point and shoot over a $3,000 a7CR that is better all the way around, except for this is just slightly smaller. All of the things that I've mentioned and the reasons I've given this to check marks is why I highly recommend, if you're looking to buy either of these two cameras, you get the a7CR. You have the versatility of putting whatever lens you want on it. This can double as a professional camera all day long. I mean, of course, this can be a professional camera too in the right hands, but this is one of the greatest compact, powerful cameras in existence, known to man, ever, in all of history, in all of the universe, for all of perpetuity, forever and ever. Amen. You may now kiss the bride. One of the only different features that sets this apart from this is the fact they have this new crop step mode. So you could do 35, 50, or 70 millimeter equivalent, which is photos, which all it's doing is cropping the JPEG. If you shoot it raw, you're still shooting the entire frame. That is not a major selling point. So at the end of the day, you know where my allegiance lies here. What do you guys think? Which one would you go with and why? Let me know down below. Thank you very much for watching. Jared, Polin, froknosphoto.com. See ya.